Okay. So I'm going to speak about two things mainly in this talk, neural foundation models and torch brain. So maybe I've talked to some of you. I'm a PhD student at UPenn and working with Eva Dyers, and our lab is called the NERDS Lab. So yeah, the structure of the presentation will be divided in three. So I will try to introduce you to what are the neural foundation models, or what I think are neural foundation models. We'll have a demo. So with a little bit like, I will present you torch brain in this demo, and I will leave you a little bit of time to play around with it. Spoiler, we have I have a technical problem at the moment to download the data. I have hosted it on Hugging Face. I was like, oh, Hugging Face is very reliable. And at the moment, I don't manage to download things from Hugging Face. So I hope it will be solved when we do that. But the worst case scenario, we won't have this quick hack. And finally, we will try to wrap up a little bit all that. So I wanted to start to ask you if you had an idea of what was a neural foundation model, or what do you think it can be or would be. And if you don't, it's also okay. But yeah, I was kind of curious to see in the audience if people had opinions or idea of what was neural foundation models in general. Okay, maybe.
I don't know what it is a priori, but for me it relates to the idea of digital twins that is also present in other fields. So basically a computational model that reproduces every aspect of a circuit or of the brain itself, and then you can do perturbations on it.
That's a very good answer. Yes, I do agree with that. Is there other people that want to provide answers? Okay. No worries. I hope you will have a better idea of it at the end of the presentation. And also, I don't think there is a strict definition. It's really recent, quite new. So yeah, there's no big consensus. So the way I want a little bit to present it to you is to try to think about it as more like, what do we want with these neural foundation models? And not necessarily how we build it. This we will see it a little bit later. And basically, one big axis is to try to think that those models we would like to be able to generalize a lot. And we'll see those dimensions. But yeah, basically in neuroscience, we had this kind of paradigm when we collect our data to answer to scientific questions, right? So your model is super good on your data, but when you try to move to another data or to another animal, things like it's way harder. So I think the major motivation is try to work on different data sets or different tasks. So yeah, that's what I wrote it here, generalized across data. And you have things that are increasingly more difficult. For example, you can have a model that works super well within a session, but if you have a longitudinal recording and you have a lot of different sessions, maybe it will start to get harder to generalize across the different sessions. It can be the same. You can have a data set with different subjects. Some subjects work like super well with your model, and sometimes it's really hard for other subjects to work well with the model. So yeah, how to generalize across that. Another part also is that actually when you start to move from dataset to datasets, you sometimes use different recording technologies, right? So if you do EEG, you will have the electrodes that are placed on different parts of the patients, or even the same recording, it will be like a little bit differently located across patients. So, and the same when you put, you have like more invasive recordings, microelectrodes or neuropixels, like they have different probe geometries. So you can imagine that if you try to fit a model on those recordings that basically record very different things, it can be hard to generalize. Same way, you can try to generalize across species. I think transferring from monkey to humans can be like already challenging, but imagine if you train a model on a mouse and you try to transfer to human, it's even harder. Same, you have different modalities, different way of recording the brain activities. How you transfer between all this is super, super challenging. So that was the first part about like how to make your models work on a lot of different data. Another aspect is how to actually make your model work on different tasks. And this is, so we'll see a little bit the task, and it will, we'll speak, what could be the use case of it. Something also to consider with that is that most of the time when you try to adapt to a new task, you have to calibrate to this new task, to give some training example to be able to adapt to that. And I think something to keep in mind is that sometimes you need a lot of data, so you will fine-tune. But one of the dimensions we want is to be able to reduce the number of data for calibration. And this kind of paradigm is like moving away from fine-tuning to few shots. So it's like you're giving really a minimum number of examples to calibrate, or even like 0 shot would be giving like no like examples and work out of the box. Quick note, don't hesitate to interrupt me or ask questions during the presentation. If things are not clear and things, there is no problem. Okay, so now that we spoke a little bit more about like this idea of we want to generalize across a lot of different things. Imagine we have this model working super well, generalizing. What would be the use cases of that? And I think there is mainly 2 big families. The first one is this scientific discovery, digital twin that you were mentioning before. And so imagine you have a model that works super well. You can, for example, try to do hypothesis testing without collecting data. If you have few data, you have fit a model and it works quite well. You can already try to augment the data you have by just running the model for free. And also, like maybe if it uncovers like nonlinear relationship, really complicated one, it can like help you to like, you give it to your model, you see that it can decode that, and it will give you incentive to explore more this direction. So that's the first part. And I think another part is the clinical or the biotech applications. So there is a lot of tasks we could try to do with that. The most famous one is BCI. So if you have neural recording, you're very good at predicting the intention of speech or the movement of a human. It can be directly translated for people that need to recover these abilities. Another one is to be able to do diagnosis or predictions, like people that have seizure, if you are able to forecast it a few seconds in advance and send them a pop-up notification on their phone. This can like literally change their life and make their life way better. And also in the invasive space, maybe be able to do deep brain stimulation, neuromodulation to help them feel less pain when they have, when they have a seizure, for example. Another one maybe that can interest you, and I think we're not so far, is like when you're inserting a probe at the moment, like you're doing your planning, so you kind of know where it is, but most of the time you know it afterwards where you're doing histology, right? And the model starts to be actually very good to like be able to do without any data. You could like take your recording and it will be able to like tell you where your like probe is exactly located, what brain region you're targeting. And this without any data. And I think what I was saying is live, real time. This is maybe the engineering part that is not yet solved. But in terms of model capabilities, I think we're already there, like without any data to be like, to know where your neuropixel is located. Okay. So we spoke a little bit like what do we want to be able to generalize. We spoke what are the use cases. Now how we do that, right? And how we do that, I think it's the easy path, and the thing that the community did is to try to take lessons from other fields that are super successful. And today we have kind of 2 super successful fields in the deep learning, is like natural language processes. Ben was talking a little bit about like LLMs, and yeah, it has changed our life and they're like so good. So can we take some insights from them? Like they're good that, you know, like they can speak different language and generalize across a lot of dimensions. And they can do a lot of tasks, they can do math, they can do coding, they can summarize your text, etc. And we can also take a look of vision I won't go too much into details, but computer vision is also a field where like nowadays deep learning is amazing about it. So I think one key technique that they've all used is to do this kind of pre-training at scale. So they use a lot of data. They will train the model with what we're calling SSL. So SSL so for self-supervised learning. I will talk a little bit about it. And then they adapt to downstream tasks. And for example, if we take an LLM, the pre-training is like just they took all the internet, and the downstream task is like whatever you are asking them with a prompt. And they need like no calibration. That's what we're saying, zero shot. Or in this case, like just you're giving a little bit of data with your prompt, and it's working amazingly. So how they were able to do that, I will present a little bit of what are the self-supervised big techniques that have been used. For like language, one of the very popular and first one was to use this mask modeling approach with birds. So it's really easy. You take a text, you mask some part of it, and you try to reconstruct the part that are masked. Quite easy, right? We know a lot ChatGPT, right? Behind, it's also very similar than BERT. What they're doing is just that they're hiding, and they're doing this task of next token prediction. So they're hiding a word or a token and try to auto-regressively predict them. So it's called self-supervised learning because, as you can see here, they work directly with text. You don't need to label things. For a lot of years, there was a lot of like constraints because people were like, oh, maybe we can take a text and put like a summary of it and say to the model, oh, you like take this input and this output is summarizing it or doing sentiment analysis. But now it's just like you can take raw text and train your model with it. And that's what's called self-supervised learning. For images, I think we have maybe more popular contrastive learning approaches. So what's happening is just that you can take two images or the same images and applying augmentations. You want to have your model giving you a latent representation, and you want two images that are similar or an image and its augmentation to have the same representation on the latent space and to have different representation compared to the other images. And this is also super strong because you see the images, one way of training them could be like you like have a lot of images and you say this is a dog. So you take the image and you say this should be a dog. Here you don't need to do that. You just take image, you augment, and you compare the embeddings. So it's like you need no labels. Okay, so what are we in for neural foundation models? I think I will speak a little bit about those three, but there have been a lot of work, mainly since 3 years. So POYO from Mehdi Azabu, that is an alumni from my lab, kind of was one of the first ones to do that with spikes. And you see there's also other people working at the same time, and nuclear is also recent work. And people have also like worked in other modalities. IAG, people have worked a lot on it and still are working on it. People work a lot on EEG. It's maybe actually the field where there's the most advanced, I would say, and also with fMRI. So all that is to say, there's a lot of work. It's super active, super young, and there have been some progress, and I think there's still many to do. But yeah, it's very active and young field. So I will speak a little bit more about those spike neuro foundation models because it's kind of what my lab is doing and what I'm more familiar. But if you're interested, I can also guide you through resources on modalities that interest you. So quickly, POYO, the motivation behind it was to say we want to train a transformer and a model across different data sets. And that was kind of one of the first ones to do it. What they were doing is they were doing like decoding. So you take the neural activity, try to predict the behavior. And when we spoke earlier about this idea of generalization, POYO was kind of the first one to show that you can generalize across a lot of dimensions, right? A lot of different primates, different labs, different sessions, and more than 100 hours of recording, so kind of a lot of data. We had other attempts. Here is NDT2. So you remember what I told you about BERT and this mask modeling, self-supervised learning. So they were also kind of trying to do that here, and they were taking the like spike train, masking it, and trying to reconstruct it. So that way you can like unify, and you don't need, for example, to even record the behavior to train your model. You can just take any spike trains and pre-train your model with masking the input and trying to reconstruct it as an output. And after that, when you really wanted to do behavior decoding, for example, they would use some portion of the data and like calibrate it with fine-tuning for this downstream task. So there's also other works. I wanted to present one that is quite recent from my lab. It's called Nuclear, and it has been made by Vinam Arora, that is also working very actively on TorchBrain. And if you remember on the images, I spoke about this concept of contrastive. Basically here, if you do contrastive, you can have very good representation at the unit level and be able to actually classify those units and classify which brain regions they belong to. So I wanted to show you a little bit how this works for our data. So you see, it's a GIF, so it will it will loop back, no worries. But what we were seeing is, so you take the recording, you take two windows, two views of this recording, and what you will do, you use a model, and you have latent for each actually units, and the units, the same units, you will pull them together, and the other one you will push them apart. And so you have a good representation of those units, and after you can linearly decode the brain region to which they belong to. Once again, if things are not clear, don't hesitate to ask questions, or we can go back to that after. Oh, okay, Ben.
Pulling together the same units, or are you pulling together units from the same brain region?
From the same units. And I mean, you could explore different strategies, but what you want also behind that is that brain region classification is one downstream application, but maybe you want actually to have a representation of this unit, and that could be like just its localization or something finer grains in the brain region.
So each unit is represented as a vector here? Push apart?
Yes. Yes, the small square at the end are just an embedding. So for one unit, you have one embedding of d dimension. Okay, so now we spoke. Okay, go ahead.
So the aim here is to use unit activity to predict which region in the brain the unit belongs to. Is that the aim?
It's one of the aims. Yes, that's at least one way of evaluating it, if it's relevant or not. It could be also just to have like, I mean, you could use it as an embedding for other kind of models and informing, but the downstream application would be that, exactly, yes.
But in this, you do not consider this brain classification task anywhere while doing this?
So when you're pre-training things, you use a task that is not your downstream task. You're pre-training on a lot of data in a supervised way, which is just trying to learn representation, right? And after you're evaluating it on your downstream task. So it's always a two-step. And the idea behind it is that when you have and your pre-training, we evaluate it, but it could be also you reusing this model on your data and just like applying it to your data.
So is there any context here? Is there a stimulus as a context? How big is the window?
That's a good question. Here it's 10 seconds. When we're looking at behavior, decoding most of the time it's 1 second. And I think there is still kind of ongoing research. I've seen recently a paper that was working on 3-second context with LFP. So I think there is no clear question of how much context do you need to be able to predict the brain region from a unit or from a LFP channel. Okay, we spoke about all that kind of neuro foundation models. Now I want to speak a little bit about TorchBrain. How do you build them concretely? How you can use them. So we built, it's kind of a recent library, it's open source. Something important to know is that it's working with PyTorch. So PyTorch is kind of now the gold standard in the community to build deep learning models. And you have always so PyTorch is like the building block, but you have a lot of extensions for specialized domains. You have it for vision, you have it for audio, and we wanted to kind of have one for neural. Behind it, I think the big emphasis, and we have seen a lot of really great packages that do a lot of cool things. We've seen Pineapple, for example, yesterday. The difference with TorchBrain is that and I will speak more in detail, but we need to load very fastly data on GPUs, the part that is doing all the calculations. So you need to be super optimized at that task to be very efficient. So that's, I think, the focus of the library, efficiency on this aspect. And so we have this, we call this brain set, and this is, so historically we had a library split up, now BrainSet is fully integrated to PyTorch, but basically what it is, it's just a translation. So you build pipelines to translate from standard like data archive or even your own data. You can translate it to TorchBrain compatible formats. We need to do that because we want to be optimized. So you need at some point to be able to transfer your data to these optimized files. And we also have already some data sets that we have processed. We have a collection and it's open source. So if you want to add yours, it's with pleasure. We try to be as general as possible in terms of modalities. And it's also written in Python, so it's really easy to build pipelines, not very difficult. What's happening when you're actually converting them is that you're transforming them to a data structure that is optimized for deep learning. So you will be able to have very fast training and inference. And finally, we also add some building blocks. What we realized is that across times, people are always kind of using the same components. So we provide a lot of them already in the library. We also use transforms that are very standard in neuroscience, like binning, not super complex one, but we have a lot of utils, transform, etc. Okay, I think I wanted to emphasize on that. So when we kind of started, the main motivation was to optimize this operation actually. And a lot of things are built around it now, which is how you load on a very small chunk of data from your time series. And how to do that, it was really not easy. We saw there is lazy loading and things. But we really wanted to optimize and to order all our data on the temporal axis to store it that way, so you can access it very easily. So that's what we did originally, and this temporal lazy loading, I think, is the main motivation and the main feature of TorchBrain. So to explain you how it works in general, we already saw what is lazy loading, but I will go a little bit more technical here. It's really important to think about this. So this is really hardware, but it's really important. You have data on disk, and you want to move it as fast as possible on your GPU, actually. So how you do that is if you're doing standard loading, if your data, you will copy it to memory, you will extract the sample you want, and then copy it to your GPU. This is really unoptimized, and you will train your model forever and ever. So what you want is actually to bypass, with lazy loading, this copy of the full recording to the memory. And so TorchBrain is basically working a lot to make this operation easy in the interface. So you have your recording, you're able to load only the small chunk of data. If you remember here, you only load that, and then you have to copy that to your model. And this makes things super fast, and you're able to train your model. So, okay, now that I've presented all that, I have here a link. you can either do the QR code, go on the link, and it's basically a link to a notebook that is a little bit fancy, so I will give you a little bit of time. And what we will have from this notebook is that you can open it on Collabs and run the cells from yourself. There will be this small session where you can play around a little bit at the end if you have some time and if the Hugging Face bug is fixed. Otherwise, you can also follow with me. If you're not necessarily interested to play around with it, you will have also probably a break. Yeah. Do people need more time to connect on it? If you're on your laptop, the tiny reel is probably simpler. Can people do a thumbs up if they're ready? Just to have a...
Nilesh posted on Slack also.
Thanks so much. That's amazing. Okay, so I will also jump to it. Let me try to make that as big as possible. Okay, so for the people that will want to hack a little bit, play around with it, I highly recommend you. Okay, I highly recommend you to open it on Collab. If you do so, the notebook should be able to run by itself. I just recommend you to follow the instruction or changing the runtime to have a GPU, T4 GPU. And I also recommend you to already kind of launch actually the notebook because the Hugging Face downloads can take forever at the moment. I hope it will work. But yes, I would recommend you, even if I will walk you through the notebook now, yeah, I recommend you to do this operation now. Do people need a little bit of time to go on the Collab? Okay, if you're facing bug with the download of Hugging Face, for the moment, let it wait maybe 5 minutes, and I will check up with people if there is a problem on that. Okay, so here we will go through this kind of example. So we build a lot around PyTorch. So I'm not sure, are people familiar with PyTorch? Can you raise your hand if you have already trained things with PyTorch? Okay, so not a majority of people. So maybe it's going to be a little bit technical, so really don't hesitate to ask me questions. I will try to make that a little bit simple, but yeah. Also, kind of a note, here it is mainly built on a single session that we will try to decode the behavior from it. And obviously, TorchBrain benefits is when you try to scale and do this deep learning. So this is really a toy example for more understanding than real showcasing the capacity of the library. Okay, so what are we going to do? We're going to do behavior decoding from the mouse brain with neuropixels. We'll use the IBL brain-wide map, one session of it. So you're probably now a little bit familiar with it. And we'll try to decode only one behavior for now, which is whisker motion energy. We have resampled it at 50 Hertz. And we'll start with having just a linear decoder. And then we'll try to let you play with other deep learning methods, either GRU or TCN, and try to see if you can beat the baseline that I've set with a linear model. I think here you can have some links, especially about the interactive visualization, but I've already presented the IBL brain-wide map, so I don't think we need to go back to that. Kind of very high level, we'll build a custom data set. So this is mainly trying to define what are the training samples, what are the X that we'll give to the model, and that's what we will try to predict the Y. We'll see a little bit also how you sample through the recording, so where you're taking those training examples. And also, yeah, more the PyTorch part, how do you train the model? Okay, yes? Sorry.
What's GRU and what's dilated TCN?
Okay, those are like very standard, I would say, deep learning models. We can talk a little bit more about them. GRU is this, if you're familiar with the state space model or like RNN. So RNN has some problems, some bias. So GRU is kind of an extension where you have another way of gating the things and just working better on sequences. It's kind of an improved RNN. And TCN, that's a very good question. TCN is a CNN optimized for time series. So instead of like, usually we use a lot convolution with images in deep learning. And so what they saw is that if your kernel do some dilation on the temporal axis, it's actually improved a lot. Okay, so the setup is the part where I will actually ask you about the Hugging Face thing. A lot of text. I'm not gonna read it to you. It will be boring otherwise. So two things to point out to you. Here is our kind of all the pipelines we have created and curated with TorchBrain. They span a lot of different neural modality, different sizes. We can go to this one from Alan, which is kind of a really big data set. And you see, I mean, I'm not saying that it is super easy to write one, but it's in Python, and it's like, at least give you a lot of flexibility. And yeah, of course, there are pipelines, those are always a little bit convoluted, but what is good is that you can already play with one existing, and if you want to actually contribute to have yours, we also provide help for you and support on how to do it well. Here we also have one. Yeah.
Idea of the pipeline is to convert it to the data set.
So this pipeline, very good question, sorry. So I was not super clear. This pipeline transforms your data to store it in the data set, in the data compatible formats, the file format compatible with TorchBrain. So, which is also HDF file. So this is like how to like translate from your data set to like storage, to store the data compatible with TorchBrain. Here, so in general, we kind of either we have those curated ones, or you can also process your own data without like sharing it to us if you need, or if you're already in development, and you can have your custom pipelines and local pipelines to transfer this data. And actually, that's what I did here. I won't go too much into details, but yeah, I made my custom one for the brain roadmap. Okay, something also to say is here I only took the good units. So there is different definitions for good units, but with the flexibility of the pipeline, it was kind of really easy. I just applied some filtering. So I removed all the low firing rates units, and also IBL as from KiloSort, and also their manual inspections, some quality control labels that are also applied to keep only the good units. So that's when I will kind of ask your feedbacks. Is there some people that are on the Google Colab and that manage to actually download the Hugging Face, or is it pending? What's the situation? Downloading?
It says for me it's not downloading. It says unauthenticated. Quite some kind of code.
All of us downloading this exact same time.
Probably, yeah.
Okay. Let's see a little bit. I hope it will work. Otherwise, sorry from me. I thought Hugging Face would be reliable, but apparently not so much. But anyway, for a lot of what I will present to you, it won't impact it. It's just I wanted you to play a little bit, and I hope we will still be able to do that. Sorry. Okay. So Here some Python imports, nothing fancy. Okay, this is quite important. So we have stored the data with the pipeline on the TorchBrain compatible formats. And if we try to look at it, actually, how does it look? What is it composed? So, I mean, I build brain-wide map sessions have a lot of data. So you will see it's kind of, it's a lot. It's a bit messy. But what we care about here is try to understand those objects. So you will see there is this data object. What else? We have regular time series, array-dict, probably irregular time series. We have also intervals somewhere. Okay. Here you will note that we have lazy, right? So this means that when you inspect them, they are not yet loaded. Nothing is in memory. You can inspect things without touching them and loading them in memory. So now about each of them, try to explain briefly why we have them. I think Guillaume already presented with Pineapple in details the objects and it was a fantastic presentation. Mine is a little bit more high level. But yeah, basically we have, I think, standard objects to store time series. Data is just a container, so you can put whatever you want in the data. You have the time series, either regular or irregular. So regular, as its name is, so when you have fixed sampling rates of your data, you can store it with regular, and it's actually super optimized, highly optimized, because you don't need to store any timestamps. So that's quite efficient because you can use indexing, and that's what we were saying about like be efficient. Regular time series, highly optimized. Irregular time series, when you actually have to register your timestamps, typically when you are spiking data, you need to like say where is your spikes. So yes, we have what else? We have intervals. Intervals are like kind of segment of data where you want to like give a start and an end. It can be used when you want to say what is your trial. So in your recording, every trial will be one interval. You can also define your splits. So say this part of the session is training data, this part will be validation, this part will be test. And so you will do that with intervals. And finally, array-dict, I think, can be seen with a kind of Panda data frame way. So yeah, you have like, honestly, here we have units, for example, and for each unit you will define their ID, you will have their coordinates, their brain region, firing rate, etc. So you can combine all of them, and yeah, behind what we will do is to store them with this temporal axis really aligned, so it will be very easy to extract a small chunk of the data. So that's actually what I wanted to kind of try to show you here. So, okay, the recording is actually, it's more than an hour. And here I only took, you see, like 10 minutes. And you see, I have loaded different behavior and spike train. You see how massive this data is. It's really a lot. So that's what I was telling you. If you don't do lazy loading and you're loading all this data to your memory, it's probably be a lot and not efficient. So that's why actually when you look, what we're really interested is a very tiny chunk of the data, right? It's just that. So that's why it's so important to be able to slice through very small windows and only take that. Also something here that for this example I defined is this movement interval. So this is within trials. What we'll try to decode are the behavior from the movement intervals. And typically it's like just 1 second after we see the mouse trying to move. 1 second after the mouse tried to move within trials. And you have also some criterions where like some trials are good or bad that we excluded, but I don't think it matters to explain too much this. So yes, okay. Very concrete step about lazy loading. So quick checkup, is Hugging Face still pending or has it worked for some people? Not. Amazing. Okay. But anyway, so how this is lazy loading look like? So here we have a session. It's not actually a gigantic session because we filter the units, but still it takes 60 milliseconds if you want to actually take all this data into your memory, and it also takes space in your memory. So that's what we were saying. We want only the temporal slices. And when you do it, you see if you take only 1 second, it's actually 8 times faster. So that's really important because if you're 8 times faster, you can give 8 times more data to the model. And you also need to think that when you're training things, behind you have a lot of things that are parallelized. So this is for only one reading, but if you have a lot of different workers, this factor is even bigger. And the faster you are, the more training example you can feed to your model, the more data you can give within a training budget. So yeah, also from that, I think something 2 points here that I wanted to insist mainly is that if you can do this lazy loading, you will pay only for the thing you're touching. So when you're storing things, it can be actually very cheap to store way more extra informations. Even if you will never use them, maybe you will use them later, or people will try to benchmark using different, different behaviors they want to decode, or you can include spikes and LFP, even if you're only using spikes for your study. And this is cost nothing because storing additional things will never be loaded for you. And the good thing is that if you want to include them later, you won't have to reprocess anything. So that's one benefit of that. And another one also is that a lot of the operations we want to do, like binning, you can do them ahead of time, but you need to take a bin size, right? So, and if you want to try different bin size, maybe you will have to reprocess it every time with a different bin size. And what is good is that if you take only those small chunks of data, you can only bin on this small chunk of data in an online way, like live. And this will make your pipelines way more flexible because you can train in an easy way with a lot of different windows. You can take small context windows that you want to decode from, bigger ones, you want to bin them at this bin size or not. And all that is enabled because you will do them live. Okay, is there any question so far? Is there anything that are not clear from what I said? Don't hesitate. Okay. So here we go, I think, on the part that, for the ones that are not familiar with, unfortunately, PyTorch, it might be a little bit tricky. So don't hesitate, once again, here to ask the questions. So in PyTorch, there is this, I think, 3 building blocks. And this is the part where you have your data on your disk and you want to load it to the GPU. So how to do that? You mainly use 3 objects: the dataset, the sampler, and the data loader. So we'll try to understand a little bit their role. And basically, TorchBrain is working a lot on that. It tries to help you to build those components. Because after, when you have your data on GPU, you can use standard PyTorch, things are working quite well. But to move your data from disk to the GPU is kind of the hard part, hard engineering part. So, okay, the data set is what will define what are your training examples. So here we want to do behavior decoding. Your X will be the spikes, the bin spikes, and the Y will be the behavior. So in the data set, you will tell them from the file on disk, extract the bin, extract the spikes and bin them, and then extract the behavior. This will be one of the role of it, define what is a sample, and also where is the sample. They will define through the recording what are actually the parts that you can sample from. The part that is defined of where you can sample from, the sampler object will actually use that and decide that, okay, from this part that I can sample from, I will give you different indexes. So here in the notebook, we will mainly use trial line things. So you have trials, and the sampler is kind of easy. It takes the different trials. But if you have natural recording, the sampler can be more fancy. It can, for example, every time take different windows, add a little bit of jitter. We'll show that a little bit later. But yes, basically you have the data set that defines what is your training samples, where you can take them, and the sampler will give the index or where typically how to randomize that, etc. And from that, the dataset will give this to the data loader, and the data loader is a very standard PyTorch thing where it takes all these samples, it collates them to form a batch. Okay, so here there's some hyperparameters. You see we're defining bin size. So what is nice is that actually you can change that, and it's very easy step. It's just a hyperparameter in your configs, so you can modify and do experiments with different bin sizes. Those ones are more about the training of the deep learning, the training optimization, and yes, those are PyTorch things. Okay, so the sampling intervals in our case are pretty easy. It's the movement interval we're speaking about, 1 second windows. Also, we split them depending on this, on what part of the data you want to fit the model. So you have the training parts. So you will define sampling interval for the training part. You will define sampling interval for the validation part of your data, and also the tests. And yes, this is done with this function. The other function is a get item, so it tells from when you have so I will show you a little bit more here. It will be easier. So the get items, basically you said, so a data index is an object that will give you the recording session, the start and the end. So, and from that, it will actually slice. It will take the recording, slice it, so it takes a small chunk of the data, take only its spikes, bin them, and transfer them to a torch tensor. And it will do the same, take the whisker motion and energy, and transform it to a tensor. There is also a lot of other things happening here. These things are more advanced. I won't go too much into details on that, but you can see that this data set has a lot of, you can it's a Python class, so you can define the bin size, you can define a lot of attributes from that, and once again, it's not things that you will need to reprocess, it's just things you're defining on your data set, so saving you a lot of pre-processing time. Okay, the sampler, I won't go too much into details because for us, we will basically, every time sampling, you see these movement intervals, but that's what I was meaning. If you consider all the behavior as a continuous recording, you could have a sampling with strategies that every time you're taking a little bit of a different window, adding a little bit of jitter. But yes, and all these kind of samplers are provided with TorchBrain. So it's not anything that you have to worry about. You can just import them for TorchBrain and use them out of the box.
Sample, you just provide the rule of how you sample, or it also extends the data?
It's just telling where you want to sample on your recording. Okay. So here a bit of code on how to actually train, validate, and test. So how you divide this. This is very standard PyTorch code. So you define a training data set, training sampler, and your data loader for your training data. You repeat that for each of them, validation and test. Something to be aware is here when you're wanting, I think the big difference and thing to look at is when you're training, your sampler, you want it to every time give you every time you're doing a training epoch, you want it to shuffle the the ordering of the samples it will give you. So this every time it sees in different orders the training examples. For the validation or the tests, you want them to be sequential because you want to be able to be consistent across the training examples, across the training epochs. Sorry, I can show you a little bit how it works here. So you see, you would have so the recording here. You would have your training split, validation split, and test split. So we can zoom, but it takes me a bit of time. But you will see that we have this movement interval that are the tiny things here. And basically what we can do is, so the sampler and all the pipeline will sample randomly for train here. And for each index that we're sampling, you see you have every time the X would be your bin spikes, and the movement, here's the whisker motion energy that you want to decode. So this will be your input, this will be your output, and every time we'll sample randomly for the train. And we will have then after the validation and test, like you see it's like same data. Something to look at here is that we have splitted actually the sessions causally in a temporal way. So this is actually quite a challenging task. We try to say that we want to fit the model on the first part of the session, and we want to be able to generalize across time. So basically, you look at the beginning of it, and you want to be robust across time. This is so it depends on what you want to do, especially if you want to do things like BCI. I think it's exactly the setting where it should be done, because like you want to calibrate through the beginning of a session and be able to generalize across time. And here I did it here also because it's a very challenging task actually. There is probably drift and things happening, and so you want to have a model and favor a model that is able to extract information that would be extract information that will hold through time. Okay. I know it was a lot, and maybe I rushed some parts, so is there any questions or thing you want me to re-explain? Yes.
So I understand that you need to generalize through time, but it seems like so that you're using a huge test set, no? Like, does that so hinder how the performance of the model? If you used more of the test to train the model, would it be better, or why is this choice?
It is so big because, okay, honest answer, I have a benchmark where you pre-train on a lot of data. So you want to like mostly evaluate on the sessions. And so you want to use most of those recordings as like evaluation setup. But I think mostly in general, you want to like, you want to have a very small calibration phase. You want a model that is able to fit on few data, and you want on the same way to have a very robust metric. You want your test metric to be good. So if you take only maybe 10% of it, not saying that it is bad, but like you are less confident because you have less test samples. So we use a lot of test samples to be sure that you're performing well. Is there any other questions? Is everyone doing okay? People are surviving. It's not like okay. Quick checkup on the download. Is it still not working? Pending?
Hasn't merged for me.
Is yours also at 59?
Mine's at 46%, and it's been that way for the last half hour.
Okay. I mean, I'm sorry about that. I think we will have kind of to skip it. I will try to fix it and resend you the link later in the day or in the week so you can play a little bit around with it. But yeah, sorry, the joy of a live demo. But it's still okay. We can still go through this. So the good part is that if you survive now, you're like good. So you saw it was complicated. I rushed it maybe some parts, but yeah, it's very complex to move the data from your disk to the GPU. There is a lot of engineering. That's why kind of TorchBrain exists. Now that this process is done, actually you can use PyTorch, and this is like, you know, a lot of people have trained PyTorch things. There is a lot of documentation. LLMs are very good at help you coding with it. And it's a part, I think, that is very simple. So when you have this interface of training example X and Y, you just build this like deep learning methods, which are this kind of black box. You say what is the input, you define what will be the outputs, and you can swap them. And that's quite convenient, right? Because you don't know necessarily which model will work. So you can plug and play the different one. You can play with hyperparameters. And all that is delegated to the users and not related to TorchBrain anymore. So something to still get some attention here is that you see in our training example here, every time we see bean spikes and the whisker motion energy. So here, bean spike is number of bean, number of units. And here, number of samples would be like 50 points for this 50 Hertz signal and 1 second context window. But you see here, you have this batch dimension. This is related to Torch. So on GPUs, you want to do a lot of computation. And what they're doing is that with this, this data loader, they will take a lot of samples, collate them, and make a big matrix with this additional batch dimension. So that's why you're seeing it here. The models are like fairly simple in terms of syntax. You see that also what is good with PyTorch is that they give you a lot of building blocks to create your models. Here it's a linear layer, for example. Here with GRU, you see we have nothing to like code. It's already the GRU provided by PyTorch. And the same way with TCN. Maybe a little bit more here, but you see they already give you the convolution layers. So it's very easy. And honestly, with the progress nowadays of LLMs, you can even delegate like the syntax to them. They're like very good at building deep learning models. Okay, how do we use them? So here we just, it was just a linear model. You provide your parameters. Something to be aware is this two device. It's kind of important. So when you're instantiating your models, they will be in memory. And what you want to say is actually say like, oh, I want to transfer you to the GPUs. So that's why you use this two device, and we want to put everything on GPUs. The training loop, like same, nothing related to TorchBrain. Everything is in PyTorch, very standard for loops. You're training for epochs. Here you see there is a loader. So it's a for loop on the loader, just you're taking the different training samples. Here you're moving them to the GPUs, fitting them to the model, and applying a loss optimization and things. Here, nothing, very standard codes. And why we don't... So we could have decided with TorchBrain to actually give you a default training pipeline. But what we realized is that the field is evolving super fast. I showed you a little bit earlier, like POYO was taking like movement and training on behavior, and DT2 was masking things and reconstructing them. So actually what we see is that the deep learning methods use very custom and complex training pipelines, and it's always evolving. So it's actually one of the strengths of TorchBrain is that it lets the people define their own training loop, and it's very flexible, so you can train all the different training paradigm you want with it. So it's led to the users, it's flexible, and I think it's matching the fast development of different training strategies. Here, nothing fancy, some code to do the tests, the validation. So I guess you're probably, like familiar with that. You're like fitting your model, training curves go down, validations goes up and plateaued. What it looks like here, I have plotted on the validation to see how does the model perform. You see it's managed to capture pretty well. There is sometimes some discrepancies, but as we're saying, the R squared, I don't know if we're seeing it, sorry. But yeah, the R squared is 0.4, so it's 0.37. So it's good, it's not amazing. If we were having the demo, you would have been able to fit other models that would bump a little bit the performance. And also what we're hoping with Neuro Foundation models is to be able, when you fine-tune your model, to have better performance because you have pre-trained on a lot of data before. Tests is just to show you that, I don't know why it's negative here. But because we were putting those very complex splits, actually, most of the time you see a big discrepancy between val and test, actually. There is probably, it's really hard to generalize. So that's why you can see sometimes drop of performances. I had this hands-on part, but I guess it's still pending. So yeah, I think I will just give you the link when this is fixed, and I will just wrap up. Okay. Is there any additional questions? Okay. Yes.
What limits the decoder's accuracy? Is it just like data, and is the accuracy? What is the accuracy basically? Like I compare with deep learning models accuracy, 70% there, 70% here. What's the difference?
Wait, can you repeat your question exactly? Sorry.
You said that the accuracy of the model will just bump up, right? You said that.
Yes, so, okay. Yes.
What's the bottleneck like? Increase the accuracy?
So, okay, what I wanted to say here is that you're training on the first part and you can have shifts, and because this is further away the test compared to the validation, there is probably a bigger shift. So even when you're good in validation, it doesn't mean that you will be good in tests. That's why it's a very challenging setup. And related to your questions, it's very hard to build a model because it's very easy to overfit to the training parts and not be able to generalize through time. That's why I think the task is hard and very interesting, because you want to be able to extract the representation that is robust across time. And to be honest with you, what happened is that a lot of people historically were actually taking random trials. So you had a representation on your training set on the whole session, and people were like, oh, it's amazing. My model works so well. Look, it's good on train, it's good on val, it's good on test. But what you're realizing is that if you try to make it generalize across time, it's way harder, and most of the models are actually struggling a lot. And that's, so we'll speak a little bit more, but we did a benchmark with this setting, and what we are seeing is that a lot of foundation models also struggle a lot on that, because they're very good at overfitting, actually. Okay. Other questions? Okay.
So I make that work. I put the code in the stack. If we just replace that code with the downloading code.
Oh, okay. Do we want to?
Just replace with WGX instead of.
Okay. That's amazing. Do we want to? How much time do we have left, Ben?
I pushed the other talk, so you have another half an hour.
Okay. Are people willing to try to play a little bit with it? Okay. So, I will come and try to show you how to debug that live. Okay, so what you're saying is that you can...
Replace this
okay.
downloading.
If you're not interested yet, don't hesitate to take a break or take a coffee. I know it was quite dense. Okay, so what you're saying is we can modify this one, right? Okay. So for people that want to try it, here use the GPU one. Hop. And let's try to see if we can move that. It works? Amazing. Okay, thanks so much for the hot fix. You saved me. Okay, so what I will recommend you is to run all the notebook and to jump to the last part. So you have a GPU on the Colab, but it's not a super performing GPU. You don't have a lot of CPU, so you can't parallelize also the data loading parts. But I think we can still play a little bit with it and try for maybe 20 minutes. And so what I wanted to let you play a lot is with this. So here, the same that the training example I'd show you, you can play around with using different models. We tried with linear. You can play with a GRU or TCN. Adjust the bin size if you want. You can, of course, change your learning rates and have more or less epochs. So, yeah, are things working? Ah. Do people have the same error here?
I get another error.
Or what error is it? With the download?
Maybe that mismatch of the variable.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
The file name is not good? Do you have access to files here? Do people manage to get through it or no? It's not working. Okay. I still think personally I have some problems. I don't know if...
I fixed it. There's one line. It was earlier some static.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Okay. Let's... Without the... Okay. Go directly to the dataset one. It's live debug. It's without agents. We don't know. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Do we? Check. Do people manage to debug from their side? Do they need help? So the first block was, this one was instead of the Hugging Face code quite, but it's a bit everywhere. You need to change this one everywhere. I see. I need to change processed everywhere, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you update it your side and we will all be your.
Yeah, if I update it. But honestly, you know what? I think I will just thanks so much for your help. I will just leave it here and fix that so it will be easier for everyone, because live debugging, it's a bit complicated, to be honest. Okay. Once again, sorry about that. And yeah, let's just wrap up a little bit the presentation. And yeah. So I think some people took a break. What do we want to do? Do we want to resume now or wait for... Yeah, right. Okay. So the key takeaway from these presentations and next steps after what I show you in the demo. So yeah, I think when you want to train a neural foundation model, a deep learning model with neural data, I think those are 4 blocks that you will have to work with. First one is your data. So it can be DANDI, you need to find an archive or use your own data. You need to translate it anyway for something optimized for deep learning. You will need to handle this part, like how to move your data from disk to GPU, and also build your model. So TorchBrain doesn't touch to the data part, doesn't touch mostly to the model part, even if we give some building blocks for people. We mainly work here. So I think the hard part is this, the disk to GPU. And TorchBrain tried to give a fast and flexible way to work around with that, with the dataset and the sampler objects that we saw a little bit in the demo. And yeah, the translation part, how to translate the data to be compatible. So you have the pipelines. We didn't look too much about it, but there's this tool, or you can already use the pipelines built by the community on TorchBrain. Okay. So from what we saw that with the temporal structure of the data, we can handle kind of most modality from neural data. You saw that lazy loading is quite important. That's what we have been able to build a lot of things out of it. This disk to GPU movement is a paradigm where you don't want and you never want to touch to your data. You have pre-processed it once, and then you touch only to this pipeline with the data sets. You can configure a data set. You can use different samplers, and also something that I didn't show you too much, but it's more advanced concept, is to use transforms. Imagining you have actually a neuroprobe recording on the mouse. You have different brain region. If you want to specifically drop certain units, filter them, say I want to care only about this brain region, it's quite easy. You use a transform that only filters this part, and you can put an experiment with two different transforms that filter this unit, this brain region or this brain region. Okay. And we saw also that you can swap models pretty easily. What's next, I would say, is that, so especially when we saw there was this example with one session, what we want is to be able to scale to different data sets, to different sessions. And this is quite easy when you have built this first pipeline. It takes a lot of time to go there, to build all these objects, the data set, transfer your data with a pipeline, translate it. But when you're done with all that, actually to scale up is really easy. It's actually one parameter. You say which recording you want to use, and it scales up directly. Something that we will speak a bit later is that the big paradigm we want is to pre-train a lot of data and then transfer, so people from the community can don't have to do these pre-train efforts. Ideally, we would like to provide checkpoint to people, and people can just use this checkpoint, load it, and try it on your own data, and don't have to calibrate too much. If you want, of course, everything is open source, and we are highly encouraging people to try to share their different pipelines, so it's easier for everyone. And of course, we have some examples and some models, even if I think we need to implement more models in the libraries that you can already play with. Speaking about models, actually, the one that we have built so far, so you have those, I think, 5 main ones. We are having others, but they're in submission. So I was telling you one of the first one, POYO from Mehdi Azabu. It was on spikes with monkeys and this supervised training setting. You also have POYO Plus. So that was an extension on POYO. This time it was working with calcium imaging on mice. And one innovation, it was trying to decode different multitask heads, so it was able to decode different behavior in the same time. So you read the spike train, and you're able to decode the different behaviors. Nuclear, I presented a little bit to you before. Spikes, nice contrastive. If we want to move more towards applications, and especially BCI, Possum is a good one. So they study on spikes, study this transfer between monkeys, so pre-training on monkey and trying to transfer to humans. And they use also, instead of the transformers deep learning models, they use state space models, Mamba for the ones that know. And this enables you to have faster inference. So typically, when you have those models and you want to use them for real-time computation, you will need to have faster models because they're a little bit too slow at the moment. Recently, we also worked with a model called Charmander, and it was on IAG with humans. And yeah, trying to do this idea of masking. We were speaking before, so you mask certain channel and you try to reconstruct them. So yeah, what I just wanted to show here is that you can work with a lot of different modalities, a lot of species and training strategies. And I think now it's kind of quite established that TorchBrain provide you a lot of useful tools. And yeah, we're excited for people to use it and to try to implement a model with it.